Today we have Ashlie Rowley on the show. Ashlie Rowley is a dynamic leader, coach, entrepreneur, and lifelong student of the game of softball whose impact spans the field, the boardroom, and the next generation of athletes. A Colorado native, Ashlie's softball journey began long before she stepped on campus at the University of Florida, where she played 4 years as a catcher, served as team captain, and set single season and career fielding percentage records. After her playing career, she continued in the coaching ranks as a graduate assistant at the University of Tennessee, contributing to SEC and regional championships, a Women's College World Series runner-up finish, and SEC and Regional Coaching Staff of the Year recognition. With more than 20 years of coaching and athlete development experience, Ashlie has dedicated her life to teaching the whole athlete, mental, physical, and emotional, believing that athletics is a platform to instill confidence, leadership, and resilience in young women. Her early passion for mentoring and player development grew in multiple ventures, including founding the Colorado Softball Academy, the Colorado Softball Academy Foundation, and Futures Fastpitch, all designed to empower female athletes through technical skill, character growth, and community opportunity. Ashlie also serves as the head softball coach at Resurrection Christian High School. Ashlie's professional journey also includes extensive work in sports performance, strength and conditioning, marketing, and business development, spanning collegiate athletics, national camps, facility leadership, and strategic partnership roles. Today, she leads the softball division at PitchCom, where she focuses on expanding the game through innovative communication technology and strategic partnerships, helping teams and coaches perform at their best at every level, from youth travel ball to NCAA to professional leagues. Off the field, Ashlie is a proud wife and mom, deeply invested in family, community leadership, and creating opportunities for young athletes to thrive both on and off the diamond. Well, what a great intro, and welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I guess what I didn't know, which is really cool. I mean, obviously you live in Colorado, and I knew that. And you're a busy woman, jack of all trades, doing a lot of different things. Hard to get a hold of. So appreciate you taking time for us.
Apologies.
But I didn't know that you were actually a Colorado native.
I am born and raised in Pine Junction, Colorado.
Pine Junction, and where is that for everyone here listening?
Yes, it's a small town in the mountains, just west of Denver, about an hour outside of Denver.
And so, how does this small town, middle of nowhere, Colorado athlete get recruited by the University of Florida?
I was 15, and the travel ball team that I was playing on at the time, we played in a tournament down in Fort Lauderdale, and so that's initially where I first got seen by Coach Byerly, who was one of the assistant coaches at UF at the time, and so that's where I got their attention, and then they followed me from there. So very fortunate, but I did have to go down to Florida, and we competed down there to get some attention.
Where did you play club?
I played for a few different teams. The travel ball scene was much different during my era, but ultimately, Colorado Stars with Dan Burns was where I landed.
And Dan's still at it.
He is. He has created an incredible organization and legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so tell me, why don't we just talk about that right now? Yeah. Talk about this, what is clearly a huge difference between the club circuit and softball and club in Colorado, softball particularly back then versus today. Tell us about all the things that are, both for the good and maybe not so much.
Yeah, gosh, we could spend days on this conversation. One of the most challenging elements I think one of the biggest things that have changed, let me start there. One of the biggest things that have changed for travel ball is just the recruiting process. It's evolved to a point where schools are looking at athletes younger. I mean, we just had a conversation in our organization with our younger athletes to educate them on the timeline of what recruiting is. So while September 1st of your junior year, a coach can contact you. However, if you're a pitcher, especially 8th grade is when they've got a radar gun and a backstop. If you walk around Patriot Games, which is an invite-only best of the best, and you watch their 14U division, you're going to see the big Power 4 schools behind backstops with radar guns looking at these kids who are, 13 years old, 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, right? So that's one of the biggest things that has changed is bigger schools are looking younger. Obviously, with the introduction of the portal, in NIL that changes the way that athletes can get recruited at a high school. Essentially, what opportunities to Power Fours they're harder to come by now with the portal, and then NILs, which is a cool opportunity if used correctly. If we go, what's changed with organizations? You see a lot of big national organizations now versus when I played, you were more local, team based. It wasn't the big brand name. Those clubs exist. I remember playing the OC Batbusters, and when you played the OC Batbusters, Gary Haining, you knew that they were the big dogs, right? But now you look around, when you play a Batbusters, there's several in every single state. So that's changed a little bit as well.
Yeah, and so, for those that don't know, I mean, Colorado hasn't been this, mecca of baseball and softball recruiting, and you have daughters now. Well, I think we'll get into that a little bit later, but, if you're going to raise your daughter to be a Power Four Division One softball player, you're not going to pick Colorado to be your landing spot necessarily, right?
It's hard. A coach of a big organization told me, and he was very honest. He said, if you want those opportunities for the kids, you've got to play with and against the best of the best on a routine basis.
Yeah. And so, but still, right, to your point, there's national brands that are popping up all over Colorado. Besides the obvious, right? Money talks. What is the allure to have all these different national brands coming into the softball community in Colorado?
I think it's credibility. I think and really a lot of it does stem back to the recruiting aspect. If there are kids who want to play college softball, having the brands that have credibility and are proven with getting kids recruited, it matters. It really does matter. And so I think that's why you're seeing them infiltrate, is because those resources that some of those bigger organizations can bring, as well as connections. Not everybody in Colorado, the Batbusters or the Bombers are not going to have Scott Smith, or they're not going to have Mike Stith out here all the time. They will on occasion have those resources from a player development perspective, but it opens kind of that pipeline to those coaches who, listen, there's proven travel ball coaches that, LSU will call and say, hey, what eighth graders do you have? Who do I need to be looking at, right? They've proven themselves in that space. So I think that's probably what the value does bring. It's not an instant guarantee, but that reputation is a big deal.
Yeah. And so, someone that now operates a non-national brand in Colorado, how difficult is that to compete with, to compete in general, let alone to compete in the Colorado space with national brands in the market?
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. We have great relationships with all of the, org founders and presidents at those national brands. I mean, we work alongside them and with them through the Alliance and what the Alliance provides. At the end of the day, it's about coaching and who coaches your team and what training programs and systems you have in your organization that matter. So we've been fortunate enough at Colorado Softball Academy. We've got a number of incredible coaches who have played high-level college softball, and now they're back in the game at the club level, and they're passionate about it, and they're well-connected within the college community. And so for us, it's just been a hard focus on what do we believe the athletes in this state and our area need to be successful and have an opportunity at the next level. So, I wouldn't say it's been hard. It's been fun working with them, learning from them, competing against them. We all have something to give to each other, and the Alliance is called the Alliance for a reason.
Mm. And so what is that need? Like what's different about the need in Colorado for softball versus other states?
Well, there's two key elements that stand out. One is weather, right? We can't be outside 12 months out of the year. However, yesterday was February 1st and we got out on the dirt, which was fantastic. But the other is that we play high school softball in the fall. And because of that dynamic, it really rearranges what our travel ball schedules look like for our athletes, especially at the older ages. Nationally, the fall is a really big showcase and recruiting opportunity for older athletes. So you'll see teams really getting, they'll have 4 or 5 showcases lined up in the fall. Our high school athletes have to wait until after this state tournament, which is middle of October, third week in October, and then they can hit 2, maybe 3 showcases if they're lucky. The hard part with that is now it's a brand new roster. So if you rewind the timeline for Colorado travel ball, we have to have tryouts in July. Typically right after the sparkler, we have to have them really early, which is so hard. And if we could ever figure that out, it'd be fantastic. I don't know if there's a perfect answer to it. At the end of the day, you've got to have your fall roster set before high school ball starts. You have that roster set. Well, those kids aren't practicing together in the fall. Maybe they get together once or twice, but not a significant amount to really impact culture, development, camaraderie on the team. So basically you're taking somewhat of a new roster right out of high school and you're throwing them into a showcase tournament together and they're still getting to know each other at that point. The other tough part is that with that is, I see this a lot with our high school kids is burnout. We start in January with our preseason prep for the travel ball season, which kicks off somewhere around 1st of March. They go hard all the way through the summer. If they're competing in nationals, they maybe get a week, maybe get 2 weeks break before they roll right into high school, which is 6 days a week. And they're doing that through October. And by the time you get to the end of October, they're cashed. But then we say, hey, lace them back up. You're now going to go to some showcase tournaments. And then when we get to Thanksgiving, you'll get a break for a month.
Yeah. My daughter did not play high school softball. I think, and to your point, I think it was lucky for her high school didn't have a softball program. And so instead of, kind of being shipped off to another high school, she just decided, I think she played tennis and basketball instead. And it was probably the best thing that could happen to her for her physical health and mental health, to be quite honest. It was just because she didn't, have that same level of burnout that I think some of the softball players in Colorado do.
Sure. It's real.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I want to go back and kind of button up because I was thinking of this. I just recently read an article in Baseball America, and they talked about the average age of Division I baseball player was 20 years old, like 20.1 in 2022. But just last year, it had jumped to a little over 22. So to the point of recruiting that you were talking about before, yes, the Power Fours are still chasing those athletes, especially the pitchers and catchers at a young age. But what's going on in softball with the rest of the kind of mid-major Division I recruiting and in Division IIs and beyond? Are they waiting longer, knowing that the portal is such an impact where they can, go and get 3, 4, 5 transfers in the middle of the year?
I'd say a little bit of both. You go, mid-majors, they're still paying attention, your freshman year, especially high impact players, pitchers, catchers, and if you're big hitters, right? They're paying attention to you. The smaller the program, the little bit more time you have, get into your sophomore year, junior year, right? So if you kind of look at that scale, larger programs earlier, smaller programs, you've got more time as an athlete. What we're seeing happen with Division I, whether it's mid-major or Power Four, is coaches are recruiting the portal because, well, if my paycheck's dependent on wins and losses and I'm trying to compete and win a national championship, I want a kid who's been in a college weight room for a couple of years and they understand the grind, they've got the reps to come in and make an instant impact versus maybe a freshman that's got to come in and learn the ropes a little bit. So the portal's really changed the way that recruiting happens. And then you look at NILs, now we've got some money to spend, which is a whole nother topic of conversation.
Yeah. So what would you tell, or what are you telling your, 16-year-old softball player that's, maybe middle of the road? Maybe she's a low-end Division I player, high-end Division II player. What are you telling her to guide her through the recruiting process?
We go through a lot of different steps from the recruiting process. The first thing is I'm never going to tell a kid that their dream isn't possible. When I went through the recruiting process, there were 2 people in the state of Colorado that believed that I could go to the University of Florida and play, and it was my mom and dad. There were a lot of naysayers, and I said, hey, watch this, and I went and I did it, right? So I'm never going to tell a kid that if they have a big dream and a big goal that it's impossible. But what we are going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to make a list, a college list, and we're going to start with 25 schools, and we're going to do research. We're going to dive into elements such as geographic location. Are you going to be comfortable and confident? Can you succeed going 2,000 miles away from home? There's one kiddo that we worked with over the last couple of years. She said, I don't want to be any farther than a 4-hour drive from home. So great. We put a pin in the map and we drew a big circle and said, what schools are in this radius?
Yeah.
Then we look at size of school. I took a macroeconomics class at Florida that had 500 people, and it was a lecture hall, and you could either go to the live class or watch the recording, and you had 4 tests, and that was your grade. Can you as an athlete learn and succeed that way? Do you need smaller class sizes, smaller environment? What will help set you up for success? The biggest thing that I tell kids is, hey, worst case scenario, you get injured, you can't play this game anymore your freshman year. Can you still attend that school and get an education and be happy? So those are the conversations that we try to have with all of our athletes. And I want a range. I encourage a range of schools. I don't want you to come to me at 16 with only Texas, Florida, UCLA, Oregon. We've got to have a range. We need to have our mid-majors. We need to go into D2s. We need to go into D3s and see what's out there. I think through this research process with these athletes, they discover there are so many more schools and opportunities that they've never heard of outside of the programs that they watch compete on TV every weekend.
Tell me about your experience at Florida in that regard. Did you have struggles when you first left Colorado, went to Florida? Did you have struggles competing, playing, everything that you just mentioned, classrooms, coaches, all that?
Yeah. So I was very homesick the fall of my freshman year. I mean, we opened this, I'm from Pine Junction, Colorado. It's a small town in the mountains that has a red light, right? My family is very close, and so I was homesick. Here I went 2,000 miles away, and it was hard. And I remember one of the most powerful conversations that my mom and I had is, we get into September, October, I wanted to come home. And my mom said, nope. At the end of the school year in June, if you still feel that way, then we'll talk. But you're finishing the year. And thank God she did that, because by the time I finished the school year, I was like, okay, I get it. I had hit my stride. I knew what to expect. Change wasn't so hard anymore because I had a rhythm. When you first walk on campus and you're away from home, you're in a new environment, it's really hard, right? And so giving yourself that opportunity to learn the ropes and to get acclimated and ingrained in the system is really key. So yes, that was really hard. I battled injuries my entire college career. So July 5th, before my freshman year, I had a major knee surgery to where basically I had subluxed my kneecap. So my kneecap would go in and out. Obviously, being a catcher probably doesn't help that, but it started in basketball. And the way anatomically that my femur is structured, so your kneecap kind of sits in a groove and it rides in a groove. Well, my lateral groove was more shallow than my medial groove, which meant if I had any quad imbalance, any strength imbalance in my quad, and I hyperextended a knee, which I did, then that my lateral quad would pull that kneecap out because it didn't have anything to balance it. It was too easy, right? So long story short, this isn't a medical lesson, but major surgery, they go in and they put 2 screws in my shin. They reroute my patella tendon. So basically my kneecap will track properly and it won't go out anymore. Well, the surgeon who did this, Dr. Steve Traina, phenomenal. He used to be the surgeon or the team doc for the Denver Nuggets. He didn't tell me, which I'm glad he didn't, but he did tell my parents. And he said, it's going to be a really small percentage if she's able to come back from this and compete, much less catch. Right. For me, it was just, okay, business as usual. I remember waking up the next morning after surgery and I was bruised hip to toe. I sat in a machine with my leg in a machine that would bend it up and down slowly for 8 hours to work my range of motion. When I stepped on campus, my first day in the fall at UF, my calf was bigger than my quad. It had atrophied that much. So the entire fall, I spent rehabbing hard. I remember sitting on a bucket taking BP because I couldn't engage lower half yet. And so it was a grind. It was hard. I'd have to show up at 6 a.m. with the team, and I did core workout for an hour while they ran, and then I'd go to the pool with our trainer and I'd get my cardio in. And that's kind of how that first fall really worked. When I came back from Christmas, we had a 1.5 mile test. That was the conditioning test after you get back from Christmas to make sure you did your workouts. And my trainer looked at me and he said, give it a shot. And I'll never forget it. One of the coolest moments is I ran that thing in, gosh, I don't remember my time. It was something ridiculous. Might have been a mile at that point, but I think I did it in like 7 minutes and 12 seconds. Now, if you're a catcher, you're not an endurance runner. Okay. So a mile and 7:12 was a big deal for me, especially coming just being released. Right. So then I go into the spring of my freshman year, and I was released to play the first weekend, and we played UCLA. So here I am behind the plate. None other than Stacy Newman gets in the box, and that was the largest human being I'd ever seen. I'm a small town girl from Pine Junction, Colorado, and I said, "Oh my gosh." She then proceeded to hit a line drive off the tree in right field, and I said, "Here we go. Welcome to the bigs." So that was
Yeah.
kind of my introduction. But long story short, I've had a total of 7 knee surgeries. I've had surgery on my thumb. I tore my ACL, and I had surgery on my right elbow. I had nerve impingement. And so that was kind of throughout the process, but I wouldn't have traded any of it, to be honest. It was a really cool experience.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot for 5, 10 people, let alone one
Yep,
person to go through. So perseverance is clearly something that you learned right out of the gates.
absolutely.
So then you leave Florida, and you mentioned you're a grad assistant at University of Tennessee. Did that start your kind of love of coaching at that point?
I think I had always known throughout my career at Florida that I wanted to stay in the game. I went to the University of Tennessee to get my master's and became a GA. Monica Abbott was there. It was kind of cool. The first 2 years, my freshman, sophomore year, Tennessee was kind of at the bottom of the SEC. They weren't very strong. Ralph and Karen were able to bring Monica in to build this program. And so while I got to compete against her, which was really fun, hitting against a 6'3" lefty that throws a ridiculous rise ball, I wanted to really learn from them. I wanted to learn a different system, a different approach. Obviously, wanted to work with one of the best pitchers in the game. And so I made my way to Knoxville. I got my master's and spent 2 years ingrained in their program. And what an incredible experience. I mean, we were base hit away from winning a national championship. We lost it to Arizona and Taryn Mowett's changeup, which was nasty. But was fortunate to be part of SEC coaching staff of the year and regional coaching staff of the year, and just the different opportunities and environments that I was able to learn in was really cool.
Yeah. Anything anything specific that they did, more of or differently that was like, yeah, this is something that I want to, that I never saw before at Florida, or that I want to make sure to continue to embrace myself.
Different styles of building culture. Um, Different styles. When I was there, they opened Sherry Lee Parker Stadium. So my senior year is when that project opened. They were at a completely different small ballpark my first year. And so to watch the evolution of that process and really building that program from the ground up, I don't know if necessarily anything that different. It was just cool to see a different program and how they communicated with their athletes versus how my coach communicated with their athletes, how they recruited, what they were looking for when they recruit, those kind of things.
And so now, how difficult is culture to build when you have so much movement in the ranks? There's just freshmen come in, you recruit 5 freshmen, 3 of them leave, you bring in 5 grad assistants, or transfers come in. I mean, every year is a revolving door. How difficult is it for these programs to build culture now?
Uh, Very difficult, to be honest, and especially when you introduce the concept of NIL and money gets involved, because the why changes a lot, right? It changes a lot for the athlete. Why are you here? Are you here because you love the University of Florida and you want to be a Gator and you want to play and learn under Tim Walton? Or are you here because you're getting a paycheck? And and I'm just using this as an example, if coach says something you don't like, well, you're going to say, I'll go get that paycheck somewhere else. You need me. I don't need you. So it's really, I think culture has probably been the biggest area that's taken the hit since the introduction of the transfer portal and the NILs. But at the end of the day, you as a coach have to know who you are, what you're building, and those who are meant to stay will stay.
Yeah. We're going to have to take a break for our sponsor here, but there's a lot to uncover still. I do want to get into PitchCom. I want to get into a little bit more about, Colorado Softball Academy specifically. And then raising daughters in this world of the softball, particularly in the club space. Maybe a deeper question on that topic of have we created a beast in all this transfer movement? Aside from NIL, aside from money, have we created a beast because of what's happening in the club space? So let's pause on that, and we'll be right back after the word from our sponsor.
Fundraising shouldn't feel overwhelming or take time away from the people you're leading. Rally for One is a digital fundraising platform built for teams, schools, and organizations that want results without burnout. Using email, text messaging, and social media campaigns, Rally for One helps you reach more supporters, raise funds faster, and get paid out without selling products, managing inventory, or running stressful in-person events. It's simple, fast, and it's profitable. With done-for-you tools, real-time transparency, and zero upfront costs. One cause, one campaign, done. Learn more at rallyforone.com and follow Rally for One on social media for tips, stories, and fundraising insights built for leaders like you.
All right, welcome back. Appreciate that word there. Man, I think we had 5 questions before we left. Let's start with have we created a beast in the club space? So there is this movement. It's hard to build culture. Well, it's really hard to build culture in the club world as well, because if the athletes and or the parents aren't getting what they want, they're paying for what they're paying to play, right? And if they don't play, then why are they paying? And then they're going to go somewhere else. I mean, that's part of it. I'm sure there's other things. Expand on that thought process there.
Yeah, building culture in the travel ball community is really hard. We believe, and I believe, a lot in player development and learning how to fail, learning how to work through adversity, learning how to earn your stripes, right? Earn your opportunity. And there's so many different layers of this. You look at, if we're truly preparing an athlete to be successful and compete at the collegiate level, then those teams at the older age groups need to have a larger roster size. They need to learn what it's like to earn your position, and what do I have to do from an on-field execution to make sure that I'm an everyday contributor, an everyday starter, getting away from that concept of just pure rotation all the time, right? Because that's not helping prepare these kids for college. Now, you do that, you have that conversation, and we'd had these conversations, and they say, well, why is there 15 kids on this 18U roster? Okay, well, there's numerous reasons. One, because in the spring for seniors, there's graduation, there's prom, there's all kinds of off the field things that you're not going to have your full squad every tournament, especially when we get into April, May, right? So there's that aspect, but it goes back to what we just talked about too, setting them up for success to compete at the next level. So that's hard. And parents and athletes, they don't know what they don't know. And I try to explain to people all the time that there's a whole nother world of softball that exists outside of the Colorado borders. It's a whole nother world, right? But we do live, it's a mini transfer portal, if you will. If you don't like your playing time, then we'll just go over there and see if that grass is greener. Or you'll even have coaches. You've got someone who's a rock star, and they'll try to come make them an offer, if you will, and say, hey, you don't have to pay fees and I can offer you X, Y, and Z. And they'll yank a kid in the middle of the season. So building culture is hard. And one of the biggest things that I tell my coaches is we're going to pour into the kids who want what we have to give, regardless of any conversations that happen outside. It's not going to be a perfect situation. I think Marty Tyson, who was the head of Corona Angels, he said something recently that I love. And his communication, if you know Marty, tough coach. But I will tell you, his kids love him. I mean, the bond that he has with his kids is phenomenal. But he will say, I will be truthful. It may be hurtful. It may hurt your feelings. My honesty may hurt your feelings, but I will never be harmful. I will never say anything that's harmful, but I will be truthful. And sometimes that truth may hurt your feelings, but it's coming from a place where I'm trying to get the best out of this athlete. I'm trying to push this athlete out of their comfort zone. Now, you get into travel ball, it's hard because that athlete and the parents of that athlete have to be willing to allow us as coaches to do that. And if they're not, then they're going to leave. And it is what it is. Again, we're going to pour into the kids who want what we have to give.
So how do we improve upon this, right? So how is it that we could better communicate, or how do you better communicate? And it's not just with the athletes, it's the parents that you had mentioned a couple of times there. So how do we get across to them? They're the customer, right? Because they're the ones paying. How do we get across to the paying customer that this is in your best interest, even though they may not be playing every single inning of every single game?
Yeah. Upfront and transparent communication has to be key. And then there's a reality is you have a coach have to be a good coach. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have that credibility to where you can build trust with those families to say, hey, we're going to have conversations and I'm going to push your daughter out of their comfort zone. And there may be days when they don't like me. And that's okay, because my job is to not be their best friend. My job is to teach them and get them to believe and see that they're capable beyond what they can believe, but also push them to do something great. And that requires getting uncomfortable. And we're not always going to be besties skipping down the first baseline, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to build that trust with the parents. Coaches, you have to have a track record that allows you to have those conversations. But communication up front. Listen, I'm not the perfect fit for every athlete. I'm not. But I'm a really good fit for a lot of athletes who say, hey, these are my goals. I have big goals. I'm willing to work hard. I want you to push me. I want you to coach me. And I'm going to say, let's go. I'm going to give you all of that, right? Never going to be harmful, but I will be truthful because I'm trying to get the best out of you. But as coaches with families, you have to communicate your style of coaching, your system, and the why behind you, why you do what you do. And if you can build that relationship and establish trust with your families, it's going to go a long way. I look at my daughter's team. They're a first year 12s team. We have had 10 of them, 9 or 10 of them, since they started with us since they were like 7, our 8U Futures program. And we've had that opportunity to build trust, and we openly communicate, and they know exactly what they're getting when they step on the field.
Yeah, let's take that as an opportunity to segue into, all right, now your daughter's playing 12U. She's, believe it or not that far away from getting recruited. What do you tell her? How do you coach her? What's this process like? You've been there, done that. So what are you doing more with her that you didn't do back then, and what are you doing less of, and what's your balancing act there as a mom as well?
Oh, can I tell you, it's probably the hardest thing that I have ever done is coach a miniature version of myself. So Logan is 9, so I've got a little bit more time with her. She's very gifted from a skill set perspective, but she's also very young. So there are challenges that come along with that when you're very gifted, and you've had a lot of success competing and you're young. You don't fully understand the what it takes behind the scenes yet, because she's been used to showing up and just kicking everybody's butt, right? I'm trying to feather the gas and the brake with her on educating. And I tell her this a lot, and sometimes we have hard conversations that are ugly, and sometimes she's like, yep, I got it, let's go. And I remind her, if you have big dreams, you have what it takes. You have the skill set. However, talent isn't enough. And these are the things that you need to be doing now, because your timing is perfect. You have your future in front of you, but these are the boxes you've got to check. This is the work that you've got to put in. And then from there, I leave it up to her. And I always tell her, I'm not going to drag you out to the cages. I'm not going to drag you out to do a bullpen. If you want to go hit, you let me know and I will happily go throw to you. But this is your journey, not mine. Then you get out of it what you put into it. It is really, really hard. I'm wired to be full send, full go mode. And I'm a grinder, right? And so remembering that she is so young, right? Absolutely. I want this to be fun for her all the way through when she graduates. I want there to be a love, but I also want it to be her journey. The way I coach her on the field, I am a little harder on her because I know what she's capable of. I know what her goals are. And so when she has moments of being 9, I call her on it, and I call her every single time on it. Versus, maybe another 10, 11-year-old, I'm not going to call them as much, but I'll remind them. But I will hold her accountable when I know she needs to be held accountable. And sometimes that's hard. It's probably not easy being my daughter in this sport. There are days where I'm like, hey, kiddo, you could have picked volleyball. And maybe I wouldn't be turning as gray. I don't know. Um, but how, I don't know, I've kind of gone off on a tangent. I'm trying to do it as gently as possible, but we do have honest conversations. There's a reality behind this is what you want. I know what it takes to get there. And if you want it, then I'll be a bulldozer. I'm not going to let you go backwards, but you've got to take the reins.
So there's a trend in the last few years in Colorado, and maybe it's been going on for longer than that, but some of the top talent goes and plays in Iowa, not in Colorado, in Iowa and Nebraska, Arizona, California, Texas, right? Those are kind of the spots that people are flying in and out every single weekend and going to play. If your daughter's 9 playing on a 12-year Colorado team, there may come a time where if you're saying to yourself, because I heard you say it before, is they got to compete, intra and inter competitive nature of, against other people that are really good. Mm-hmm. Do you see a scenario where she's playing on an out-of-state team, or are you going to try to keep her playing in Colorado almost no matter what?
It's hard. There's so many different thoughts and conversations that I have on what's the best thing. Again, she's 9. The best thing for her right now is to love the game and continue her development. And as much as we can control the competition level and putting them in situations where they are competing against high level talent, we're going to do that. As she gets older, I don't know. There's a lot to be said. A lot can change between a 9-year-old and what a 12, 13-year-old looks like. Whatever is going to be best for her development is ultimately what I'll do. If that means that she goes and plays and picks up for a team that can give her what we can't locally, or give her what I can't locally, then that's something to discover, and that's something to talk about. I do think what's best for her at some point in her career is to be coached by somebody other than her mom, that knows this game at a really high level, right? What does that look like 3 years from now? I don't know. But at the end of the day, I want what's best for her to set her up for success long term.
Great answer. We'll be watching. I could be the passenger on that nowadays.
Yeah. I'm jealous, by the way.
My wife and I, we tried like heck to stay out of the sport and like not to coach, but we got reeled in. She got reeled back in to coach our daughter. I got reeled back in to coach my son, and any opportunity we had to step away from it and let someone else coach it, we did. But it's not easy to do.
No. At
the same time. Tell me about the differences that you have in Colorado State Softball Academy, Futures Fastpitch, and then the foundation. What are the distinct differences between those three?
Absolutely. Futures Fastpitch actually started first. That was the program. And it was a selfish endeavor where, at the time, Logan is the oldest, Austin's the youngest, they're 17 months apart. And so when they were old enough to play t-ball for the first time, my husband and I coached their team through local parks and recs. And it was fun, but then I was like, okay, what's next? And at that point, I learned in our area, there really wasn't anything for girls. If they wanted to play bat and ball, they'd have to go play baseball for a few years. And then maybe when they got to probably 10U, there was more opportunity. But for me, that wasn't good enough. So I said, hey, hold my beer, let's do this. And we created the Futures League. And what I did is went out to our local talent. I say local talent, the instructors who played high level that are just great coaches that are giving lessons and teaching in this area. Chris Hutton, Taylor Gentry, Riley Frost, Shelby Babcock, and said, all right, ladies, we're going to create something that doesn't exist, but there's a need in our community. And so we built the Futures League. We built the NOCO Futures League. And we took a look at, what are the rec rules? We took a look at, what is IPGSA doing? What is UTRIP doing? What is USA Softball doing? And at the 6U and 8U, we started with 6U and 8U age groups. And we wrote the rules specific to what we knew they needed from a proper development, right? As a catching instructor, I get kids at 14, 15, 16, heck, even going into college that don't throw properly. They don't have quality throwing mechanics, right? And so we wrote the rules specific to practices and games to make sure that we reinforced learning the game, learning the rules of the game, and then learning the proper fundamentals. And so that's how the Futures League started. It's now grown, I don't know, we're in our 8th season, possibly. I think the first season might have been spring of 2022. And so we do a fall and a spring, and we're getting ready to kick off our spring season in a few months here. But it's evolved and it's grown to include 10U and 12U, which has been fantastic. So Futures is an instructional kind of feeder program. It checks a couple boxes. One, it's an opportunity for girls to learn and play softball. We know in Colorado, we're seeing our high school participation numbers decline. Well, volleyball, gymnastics, and soccer are absolutely kicking butt at the younger age groups. And it's not a surprise that our indoor sports are kicking butt, right? They're outpacing our outdoor just because of the climate with that. So I wanted to create that opportunity for kids to just learn and play softball, whether they stick with it and go to college or they just say, hey, that was fun. Now I want to try something else. It's evolved into kind of a feeder program into Colorado Softball Academy, which is the organization. CSA started initially as a facility. That was kind of my goal. I never had an organization in the initial business model. It was more so I wanted a place that focused on softball, that provided high-level instructors that played this game, and that was it was a place for female athletes to come train where they felt safe. They could fail and know that we had their back and would push them forward, that they could go and lift and not have to worry about what the boy next to him was doing or saying, or they could hit in a cage and not have that comparison issue. So that's what I wanted, and that's how CSA started. It has then evolved. I sold off the facility to EL1 Sports in 2023. They took over the reins of the brick and mortar, and then we kept CSA, the organization, now to just focus on the teams. I'll back up just a little bit. When we were in the process of opening the facility, we had a handful of 16 and under kids come to us and say, hey, Ash, where do I try out? Where do I play this next summer? And so I went to, some of our instructors and I said, does anyone want to coach a 16 and under team? And Liv raised her hand and said, I'll do it. And we had a tryout 2 weeks later. We had 88 kids show up for 16 under tryouts. And I said, holy bananas. So then we had 2 16s. Well, then 2 weeks later, now we've got 8 teams. And I said, well, I guess we're doing this too. So we kind of were building the houses we were living in at that first year. And it was so apparent that there was just a need in our community for what we had to give. Now, the foundation is a separate entity. The foundation was set up initially. So I'll kind of tell you the story of how that became. I think it was 2019, I started giving lessons again. So I had gotten out of the game a little bit. I had 2 under 2. And when my kiddos got to the point where, I knew my name and I could see street again, I told them, and I said, you know what, I want to start doing lessons again. Number one, we have 2 in daycare. That's expensive. But I want to expose them to the game that provided me so much and taught me so much. So he put up a batting cage in our garage. And I said, I'll take on 8 kids. I'll work with 8 kids. And every single one of them, the first time they walked in and I met them, the first thing their parents said or they said was, she has no confidence. And that it resonated with me over and over again. And then I had a situation where my niece, she was 12 at the time, lives in Ohio. And her mom called me and said, Ash, I need to let you know that Presley's good friend died by suicide. And it was because 2 boys walked up to her on the playground and said, you're fat and you're ugly and you should kill yourself. And that little girl went home and she did that. And so that hit me as I look at my girls were 2 and 3 at the time. And I said, what kind of world do I want them to grow up in? Who do I want to surround them with to remind them every day that they are strong, that they are beautiful, and to give them the ability to control their own inner confidence, where if a boy walks up to these kids on the playground, they punch them right in the teeth, right? So the foundation, that's where the foundation began. And essentially, our missions are to provide scholarship opportunities for athletes whose families may not be able to afford this game. It's expensive. Player fees are expensive. Equipment is expensive. Travel is expensive. Camps are expensive, right? If we can help offset, Odyssey Alexander is a great, she was actually someone that stood out when we started the foundation. I mean, her family didn't come from a lot. And she would throw into a tire in her backyard. And then she took JMU to the College World Series, right? She's now playing in AUSL. If she never had the opportunity to pick up a bat and ball, we'd be missing out on an incredible athlete in our game. So scholarships help offset that. Professional development for coaches, right? We rely a lot on volunteers. You have to coach. If we can give these coaches the resources and the tools to try to recreate what we know in them and give them that information, we want to be able to do that, because we know if we have quality coaches, these kids have a better experience, right? And then the last and probably the most important mission was mental health. We've essentially created partnerships with local therapists in our community to where if any of our coaches recognize an athlete who could benefit from clinical therapy, or an athlete expresses a need or a want to any of our coaches, basically what we do is we provide them with a phone number to call and get scheduled, and then I get the bill, and we cover the cost to remove any financial barrier from that.
Wow. And then that's still not everything that you do. You're also coaching high school and work for PitchCom.
Yeah, I do that too.
What's so just quickly here, what's the difference in you coaching high school versus the club side of it? And like, how do you, because high school is very different in general, let alone very different in Colorado. So tell us about those differences and like, different levels of enjoyment you get in coaching high school versus the club side.
Yeah, absolutely. So I coach for Resurrection Christian High School. It's a small K through 12. My kids go there, and I mean, if you haven't picked up on the theme, my kids are the driver for majority of everything that I do and I build. When I took over RCS, I turned the job down initially. My oldest was in kindergarten, and they came to me and offered me the job. And I said, it was the first year that I was building CSA. And I was like, guys, I just don't have the bandwidth. I will help support the growth of the program. I just don't have the bandwidth. And they hired somebody, and a couple months later that didn't work out. And I showed up to go to chapel with my daughter one day, and I'm sitting there at the coffee shop, and the AD walks up next to me, and I said, "What's going on, sir?" And he goes, "Well, my coach just quit." And I was like, "Oh no, what's going on? What are you going to do?" And he goes, "I'm looking at it." And I was like, so long story short, I knew if I had strong assistants that with me that I might be able to do it. And so that's what I did. I built a strong staff, and they were incredible. So that was year one. When we took over that program, the previous year, the team was 1-19. They had won one game. And in that first season, we took them to their first state tournament appearance. Gosh, I can't remember what our record was. I think we won like 14 or 15 games. And Chris Hutton beat us 1-0 in the bottom of the sixth in that first game, but it was a dogfight. What is different? And I finished 4 years. I'm walking into my 5th year at RCS, and I don't coach high school because I have nothing better to do with my time, because it's a lot of time. But the culture and environment at RCS is amazing. I don't have any issues with parents. I don't have any issues with kids. These are a bunch of great kids, whether or not they know how to throw a ball or they're Division I talent. They are great kids that want what you have to give. It's probably the hardest coaching job, because you have 2.5 months to teach all realms, right? The kid who doesn't play travel ball, has never played rec, and she wants to learn how to throw. And then you have the kid that you're preparing to go to college, right? A high level player of the year, a hitter, right? So you've got to coach all. We don't have a JV where it's a small school, so we've got one squad, and we have anywhere from 12 to 14, 15 kids, and you'll figure out what you're made of. You'll figure out what your staff is made of really, really quickly. But the community and culture that our RCS provides, there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of tradition. I love that my kids can go to the same school and interact with the kids that we coach. I've got a really cool picture from December where they do an all school sing along. It's a Christian school, so they got together and sang Christmas songs, and one of my freshmen had her arm around my daughter as they're all singing together, right? And my youngest is in 3rd grade. So that's why I coach high school. We, as coaches, we can impact kids far beyond coaching the best of the best to play at the Power 4, right? There's some kids that may never play college ball, may never play travel, but the impact that you can have on those kids through that environment is pretty powerful. So
that's excellent.
Yeah.
And so PitchCom, I know Louisiana Tech, where my daughter played, uses PitchCom. Their nemesis Dot over at Liberty uses PitchCom. For those that don't know, what is it, and why should someone use it if they're not?
Absolutely. So PitchCom is a one-way communication system for on-field communication. So PitchCom was founded on the heels of the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal. our co-founders and co-inventors, John Hankins and Craig Filicetti, basically, well, they're magicians. Their background is magicians. It's in magic. And so they looked at that, and Craig is a microelectronic engineer, and John is a patent attorney, and they said, we can solve this. And they created this communication system to what is PitchCom, that prevents any sign stealing, any hacking, but it also now, in year 4, pace of play, player development, broadcast, and fan engagement for what the PitchCom system now provides is incredible. So basically what it is we've got a handheld transmitter. Can actually, well, it's behind me. Should have brought that out for me. But a handheld transmitter to where you pre-program your pitch calls, your play calls. It's approved on offense now. And so you'll, click 2 buttons, and now that pitch or that play is sent to either an audio piece in a hat where they hear the pitch call or play call. You'll see that in baseball. So if you watch Major League Baseball, all the guys have the audio piece in their hat. And so anytime there's a play or pitch called, they will hear that. You'll see the catchers, if you see a little remote on their shin guard or on their forearm on a kind of a wristband, they're calling the plays from that. And then in softball, it looks a lot like a watch, but it's a digital display. You can wear it on a wristband like a watch. You can wear it on your glove with that. But essentially now it'll send you, drop, low and in, river, or change up, out, or, whatever you want that command to be. If you're picking off at first base with second baseman covering, you can send that command. And now on offense, there is no excuse for a missed sign.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the one, it's off topic, but on topic, I guess, is that's the one thing I think families, athletes and parents don't understand is that level of scouting that takes place at the collegiate level, right? It was when you play club, you play high school, you may get that same pitch on the outside corner every single time for years, right? Because that's the way they start everyone. In college, if you can't hit that down and in, you're never going to see another pitch until you prove that you can, because the scouting reports are there and the communication tools that PitchCom offers. So,
well, I use this with my daughter's first year 12s. I mean, they're bougie, they're spoiled, but every one of them has a PitchCom. As we use it offense and defense. And I do have to tell you, I mean, we implemented it last year when they were second year 10s, and the increase in the development of my pitchers and catchers since implementing this communication was off the charts. I mean, the pitchers essentially, they look down, they see drop, low, and in. So now their mind's eye is seeing drop, low, and in. They get on the mound, they're hitting their spots. Mm-hmm. Catchers, right? There's no more fumbling with fingers. I bypass the old school card system. I hate it. I think it was such a big distraction. 5, 4, 3, whatever it is. Yeah. I never use that. But it's really cool to see the development of the athletes now that the communication is clear and easy and fast.
Yeah, especially, you mentioned pitchers and catchers, but even the position players, they see that or hear that every single pitch for every single batter and can really start to understand while they're on defense, the offensive side of the chess match that's occurring, when they go up to the plate. So I think that, subtly for years now, starting as a 9-year-old, the level of development's going to be crazy for people that have processed this for years and years now. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, one final question for you.
Yeah.
What's Ashley's legacy now? What, 10, 20 years from now, what are people going to be saying about this person who literally does everything?
It's an interesting question. What do I want my legacy to be? I think somebody who created opportunities for female athletes to be confident and strong and do something that they loved. I think that's at the end of the day, the ultimate legacy. Not afraid to do hard things, not afraid to change the status quo, but at the end of the day, to provide opportunities that don't exist for female athletes in the sport.
That's great. Great, short, sweet, to the point, clear mission, and great way to wrap it up. So, Ashlie, thank you for all your time. I know you're busy, so I do really appreciate you jumping on here with us.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate you having me. Thanks so much, Tony.
Thank you. Take care.
Dance, but you gotta keep it up a little something like this, like this, like this, like this, like